Hello, my name is Brittany Quickle from Chiaroscuro Tarot. I just wanted to share some thoughts, some advice, some things that I've been thinking about. The intention for this is spiritual protection, because right now we are about halfway through October, and this is the time of year when the veil is thin between this physical earthly world of us who are living and the spiritual world, the world of people who have passed away and are on the other side, the world of spirits in general. At the end of this month, we have Halloween. There's also Dia de los Muertos, and in Italy, there's All Saints Day or All Souls Day. And that's not a coincidence that all of those holidays all happen in the same period of time, because as we move into this fall season, and this month in particular, this is when the veil is thin. We're in this earthly world, this world of living beings, but the spiritual world always coexists along with us. Spirits are always around us. The way I would describe it is, think about the ocean, okay? We are human beings. We live on Earth. We live on the land. We're on the ground. We're living, breathing the air. We're on the ground. The spiritual world is like the ocean, okay? If you think about the ocean, it is big, it's vast, it's part of our Earth. And if you look at the ocean from the beach or from a boat on the surface, you're just seeing the surface. You can't see what's under the water. I love to watch like the Nautilus submarine Instagram, marine biologists who go in a submarine and then they find some crazy ocean creature that they're like, oh my God, look at that like giant squid that we had read about in books, but this is the first time that we're seeing it. The spiritual world is like that, okay? Like, it's like when you go beneath the surface of the ocean, there's all kinds of crazy shit. There's whales, there's sharks, there's fish, there's coral, there's crazy jellyfish, and like all this crazy shit that we don't have up here on land that is living and breathing beneath the surface, and it's a whole different world. And it's a world that has its own rules, that has its own like creatures, entities, all of that good stuff. And it's part of the natural world as well. Just like the ocean, it's got all of this like magical creatures going on. That's how I would compare like the spirit world. So in the spirit world, we've got people, loved ones who have passed away. We have our ancestors who came before us and are no longer living. There are entities, there are angels, there are deities, there are, you know, Buddha, Jesus, like all of these different like archetypical characters and spirits essentially. And it's so big and it's so vast, and there's just so much out there. Like, we're never gonna know all of the different creatures in the ocean. Like, we don't even know what is in the deepest depths of the oceans. We don't know. That's why I love to watch the Nautilus marine biologists, because they're like, oh my God, look at that creature that like, we don't even know what that is. We've never seen that before. So I say all this to say, as a psychic medium and as a witch, and as someone who has, explored, always been tuned into this other realm, this other world ever since I was young. When I was little, I used to love the ghost hunting shows and the paranormal activity stuff. I grew up in the 90s, so that was really big back then. Recently, I read a book by Rachel Stavis, who is an exorcist. It's called Sister of Darkness. Highly recommend it. It's a good spooky season read, but it's a really great read to give you an introduction to some of the darker entities out there. Not everything is as crazy as like the Exorcist movie, that's like worst case scenario, but there's a lot out there. Let me put it this way, to use our ocean metaphor here. During this time when the veil is thin, it's like you're swimming in the ocean. So if you're on the beach and you're like swimming into the ocean, you still need to be careful. You need to not go swimming during a hurricane or a storm or when the sharks are feasting on some fish, or if you're like bleeding, God forbid. There's certain rules and certain things that you need to know to protect yourself. In certain parts of the world, like there's like huge waves. So this is just a really important time for spiritual protection. And the thing that I would say is really important for everyone is just to make sure that you are staying grounded, that you are connected to reality and to this world and to this earth. Because the more grounded you are, the better off you're gonna be. It's if you are staying on the shore, on the earth, you're on the beach, you don't really need to worry about a shark like jumping out of the waves and biting you. Like, it's not gonna happen, you know what I mean? But if you are someone who's also into connecting with the spiritual world, if you're into like witchcraft, if you're like maybe starting your spiritual journey or starting to like delve into like folk magic practices, then spiritual protection is really important. And it is important to educate yourself, because that's when you start to tread, walk into the water, into the ocean. You're starting to go out into the waves, and you just want to make sure that you are protected. I wouldn't recommend, if you don't know how to swim, for example, that you go like on a boat out into the middle of the ocean where there's like sharks and crazy stuff, and then just jump right in and try to dive deep. Like, I'm trying to use this like ocean metaphor to explain this. But essentially, if you stay grounded during this time, you drink a lot of water, you eat good food, you do things that help to relax you, ground, make you feel good on a regular basis, you're gonna be fine. That's probably the biggest thing that can protect you. Is it's not necessarily amulets or candles or certain practices or things. It's yourself. You are the one that protects yourself spiritually, always. And Rachel Stavis talks about this at length in her book, and she gives a lot of great, specific techniques for what to do to help to raise your vibration, raise your frequency, which essentially means you're feeling good, you're feeling strong, you're feeling like, I'm good, I'm grounded, I'm standing on the land, no sharks are gonna jump out of the water and bite me, you know what I mean? And again, like, I like to use like real world metaphors to try to, bridge the gap between the earthly realm, like the spiritual realm, because I am a psychic medium. That's like what I do. And I'm also an Italian American witch and folk magic practitioner. And I think when I started my journey, some things that I wish I knew, like I said, I've always been tuned into this other realm, like this energy, and knowing that there's something else beyond, there's something else like under the surface of the ocean. There's a lot going on there that we don't always see. And I've always been tuned into that. And I've also always been like really protected and pretty grounded. I went to Catholic school when I was young, like from preschool until like 3rd grade in New Jersey. And they taught us like the Catholic prayers of the Our Father, the Hail Mary. If you're also Catholic or you're Christian and those prayers resonate with you, those are really great tools for spiritual protection. You don't have to say those prayers if that doesn't like vibe with you. But again, if you are Italian American and if you're like Roman Catholic, saying like the Our Father prayer, that's gonna help you out. That's gonna protect you, because there's a lot baked into that short prayer that includes protection. One of the last lines of that prayer is, "Deliver us from evil, amen." That's just like a prayer. So if you're not into prayers, or if you're from like another religious background and you can think of like other prayers that include like protection in there, then that might resonate with you. If not, affirmations are also great. So I am always protected, I am always safe, I am divinely protected, I'm gonna be okay no matter what, like everything's okay, I'm good, I'm strong. Like these things like also help you as well. It's good to think that every day, say that every day, and just have that start to just be your vibe. And really truly believing like, I'm okay no matter what, like no matter what happens, like I'm okay, I'm good. Having that, cultivating that energy within is gonna help you out. Because when we get like scared, when we're like really like in an energy of fear all the time, or if we're like struggling with heavy things like depression, anxiety, if we're like grieving, if we're struggling with addictions, especially, like this can make you extra vulnerable to just like, it's swimming in the deep depths, swimming in the water with the sharks and you're bleeding. Like it's, okay. But again, like if you are struggling with those things, that it's just good to be aware, okay, you know what, I'm extra vulnerable right now because I'm going through a hard time. I'm like, you know, doing this. And that's like a good time to just take extra good care of yourself. Really take good care of your body, your mind, your spirit, and also just know that you will be okay. Like you can be struggling with like depression or mental health issues and also be like, but I am protected. Like I am spiritually protected. Another thing that will help you no matter what is visualizing yourself being protected by a powerful white light of protection. This like divine white light of protection, and you can just imagine it like coming, shining down on you from the sky, and it just covers your whole body, and you're just like protected and shielded by this powerful white light of protection. If you can just visualize that, and you could just imagine that, you could just feel that, sense that around you, that is super powerful. That is a very powerful like spiritual protection tool that you can use anytime you need, anytime you, like literally anytime, before you leave the house or at first thing in the morning, before you go to bed at night. If you're feeling spooked out, I don't know, you're like home alone and you hear something weird, anytime you feel like you need it, you can visualize yourself protected by this shield of this like white light of protection. And that's really powerful technique as well. What else? So that's what I would say is the most powerful thing. Your most powerful protection in the spiritual realm is you and yourself. Like you are a spirit, you are a soul living in a physical body. And those are some techniques that you can use to protect yourself spiritually anytime, but especially now while the veil is like thin between this world and the other world. Just tell yourself and truly believe, I am good, I am protected, no matter what. Like I got this white light of protection. God is protecting me. If there's like other deities, the universe is protecting me. My ancestors are protecting me. My spirit guides are protecting me. If there's any like angels or deities that you work with that really resonate with you, you can believe that they are protecting you. If there's a specific loved one on the other side, you can believe like they're protecting you. Just knowing that you have so much protection around you and truly believing that and knowing that's what's gonna help you out, okay? So even if you're struggling with the things that I talked about before and you're like vulnerable, just know that you're always protected and that will help you, okay? You can also think about like spiritual protection, like physical protection, making sure that you lock your door at night. I used to live in New York City, and when I was like really going through my like spiritual witch awakening, like when my psychic intuition really got turned all the way the fuck on, I was living in New York City in Manhattan in Harlem, and it was right before the pandemic, and a lot of crazy shit happened and I was freaked out, and I was surrounded by a lot of people living in an apartment building, like lots of other people's energy, and just, you know, really swimming in the ocean of like lots of people around me physically, and then lots of spiritual like kind of activity going on at the same time, just because everybody's got like their own energy and different like things going on, spiritual things going on like with them. So yeah, it was a pretty like intense time where my sensitivities. Like I realized I was an empath and that I was a highly sensitive person and that I was psychic and that I was also like a medium. Like all of this like happened at once. And I have a lot of stories of like different premonitions that I started having, and just it became pretty clear to me that I was like tuned into this other realm of information. Like I remember there was this one week, like about a little over a month before the pandemic. This was like at the end of January. There were a couple days in a row where before I went to work, I was like meditating before bed, and then I had premonitions about what very specific things that happened the next day at work. And I started to get really freaked out because this was like a pattern of I'm getting this information and then this thing happens, and I knew this before it happened. So it started to really freak me out. And I remember this one, right around the same time, my Sicilian cousin who's like a witch, her mom's a witch, her grandmother's a witch. Like her mom is the one that taught me a lot of these practices, like how to remove the malocchio and everything. And my cousin took me to this crystal shop in New York City. It's called Crystal's Garden. Highly recommend, like 10 out of 10. If you're in New York City, go there, talk to those guys. It's been there for 25 years. It's run by a Mexican family. They're totally shamans. They know so much. And she brought me there and she was like, you gotta go, I gotta take you to this crystal shop. I've been going there for the last 10 years and these crystals will like talk to you and the vibes are like, you can really feel it. So we went, and again, this was end of January 2020, okay? I totally didn't know that a freaking pandemic was gonna come and change my life. But I went in there and I was like working at the time in a building in Manhattan that had really dense, heavy energy, really just rough energy. And I went in there and I was like, I need crystals for protection. What do you got for me for protection? And they were like, here, take some black obsidian and smoky quartz. And they were like, they have a whole bunch of different crystals and then different amulets, talismans from all different parts of the world. It's really beautiful. It's a really awesome eclectic mix. And the guys there are really knowledgeable about all of this. And, moving into a little bit more spiritual protection tips, you can work with certain crystals that can help to protect you as well and also help to ground you. So I got this chunk of black obsidian, a round black obsidian piece and a smoky quartz piece. And I had those like from the moment I bought them, I had them in one in each pocket up until during the pandemic. And I would bring them to work and I would just hold on to them when I felt like I needed protection or I just needed a shield around me. And that can really help. Also, black tourmaline is a great stone to work with. I think shungite is one as well. You can look up a little bit more of these. I don't have shungite, but that's a good one too, really grounding. And yeah, just sometimes holding on to things, like holding on to a crystal like that, there is an energy and it does help to ground you. And those crystals in particular are great for shielding, protection. What else? And then also one of the guys, I was like, I want something that I can wear and be protected. And this is getting into a little bit more, again, your first line of defense for spiritual protection is like you visualizing that white light, saying prayers or affirmations that feel really like powerful for you, knowing that you are protected no matter what. And something I learned from reading Sister of Darkness by Rachel Stavis, who is an exorcist who sees a lot of negative entities and like really big, bad, crazy shit. The thing that I learned and took away from reading her book is that the light, the positive, high vibe energy always protects you from the darkness. So if you just have that in your mind and you're like, I am protected no matter what, that will help you. Just that vibe and that energy will really help you. And that's what these guys told me too, because once my psychic abilities started to open up and I started to have like weird experiences happening, I started to freak out a little bit. And I remember I went back to the crystal shop like a few days later after I went there with my cousin, and I went there like, I was a little freaked out because a bunch of crazy stuff happened to me where it was a bunch of patterns of premonitions that I had. And I showed up and I was like, yo, you guys, like, I need help. Like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I remember they looked at each other and they're like, oh, okay, we'll go get the crystals for you from the back. And I was like, okay. And they busted it out like the shaman crystals, like the ones for the people who start like having premonitions and stuff. And then I freaked them out because the crystals, they put like a little bowl together of these different crystals and they were like, here, which ones speak to you? Like, which ones like call out to you? And I was like, this one and that little like crystal ball right over there. And they picked out the crystals and they look like, I remember these two guys, they're Mexican dudes who are like shamans, like they were so knowledgeable. They were also so like supportive and caring, and they really were able to help me ground and figure out what I was doing. But anyway, I picked out these crystals and they both looked at each other and were like, oh shit, like she just picked out the crystal that opens up the Akashic records and the other one that opens up the Akashic record. Like they were just freaked out that the ones that I picked without really knowing anything about crystals were really aligned with people who are psychic mediums and who are tuned into this. So one of the things that they told me was like, because I showed up there and I was like, yo, I've been having premonitions, I'm freaked out. Like if I'm open to this, all of this stuff, what is stopping me from getting possessed by something? I was really in the beginning stages of my whole journey and I didn't know as much as I know now. And they were like, listen, you're okay. You're working with the light, you're aligned with the universe, you're grounded, you're staying grounded, you have good intentions. You know, that dark, dangerous, crazy shit, you really have to go looking for it to come and find you, you know? You don't just live your life, you know, you're living a great, happy life and then you get possessed by a demon. Like that that's not how that works. Just like when you're on land and you're walking around on earth, a shark isn't gonna come and bite you. That's not how that works. Like these are, you know, these are two different realms that you're talking about. If you go swimming in the ocean and you're bleeding, yeah, like then you could maybe get bit by a shark, okay? So they really helped me out and just helped to ground me, calm me down, and explained a whole lot of stuff to me that really helped me out. So crystals are another thing that you can use to help protect yourself and your home and your space. And talismans and amulets are also part of that. Like I said before, imagining yourself surrounded by bright white light, like that's always going to help you. But if you feel like you want to wear something that gives you some extra protection, that's great too. So in Italian and Sicilian traditions and folk magic, we have these are our main talismans and amulets. This is an Italian horn, it's a cornuto. This is a mano cornuto. These were both gifted to me by my Sicilian aunt. I'm not Sicilian, I'm Northern Italian, but my Sicilian aunt by marriage is the mother of my cousin who took me to the crystal shop. She gifted these to me. She gifted me this horn when I was 13 years old, and then this mano cornuto when I turned 18 before I went to college. And she was like, don't ever take these off or you'll die, which is like, that's what she said, but that's not really true. It's just, she was like, this is really important. Always wear it. Don't take it off. This is here to protect you. And to especially protect you from the malocchio, which is our version of the evil eye, which is usually caused inadvertently, unintentionally through people who are jealous of you or envious of you for whatever reason. It's not the worst thing. It's not like somebody's putting a curse on you. That's a little bit more intense, but it is something that happens. It's an energy that can happen if you tell people your good news or you tell people something that you're planning on doing. That can happen. Or if you are like, hey, look, I just bought this new thing. Like, people can become jealous of you for a multitude of reasons. Another way to protect yourself spiritually and energetically is to keep some things private. To have privacy in general is protection. Okay, let's say like you're about to make some moves, you're about to buy a new house, you're looking for the house, you're going through all the steps that you need to take. Don't tell people, don't tell everybody that you're gonna buy a new house, you're gonna buy a new car, you're gonna move to this place or whatever. Things that are still in the works, that have not been set in stone, you haven't signed the contract on the house, moved into the house, don't tell anybody about it, okay? Like that's like ultra conservative end of the spectrum, is don't tell anybody until it's already a done deal. Or you can only tell people that you really trust, but you don't want to tell the whole world until it's like already happened. Recently, an Italian American woman that I know, she had written a book and she didn't tell anybody that the book was coming out, that it was being nothing until the book was published and it was out. And then she's, oh, I just published a book. Here you go. And I was like, that's some old school Italian shit right there. That's what I mean. So anything that's like up in the air, any plans that you're making, anything like that, you want to keep it private. And then some Italians and Sicilians also believe that after something good happens, maybe you want to keep that private as well. But it's really up to you. But just know that if there's something that you're manifesting or a dream, or for example, when it's your birthday and you go to make a wish, you don't tell anybody what the wish is. It's like that kind of idea. So keep what is sacred to you private. Keep your plans and your hopes and your dreams and your wishes private, because then nobody else's energy can mess with that, okay? So that's also good, important spiritual energetic protection. Privacy is protection. You're not gonna go out on the internet, tell everybody where you live and where you keep the key hidden under your mat or the rock or whatever. No, you're not gonna do that, because that's not good. People can then break into your house. Like, you know what I mean? Spiritual protection and physical protection are similar, okay? I used to work with a lot of cybersecurity engineers, and cybersecurity is, you know, helps protect you. Like you don't tell everybody your password for your email and your Instagram, right? It's the same thing. Cybersecurity and physical security are the same type of thing. Just like you wouldn't give someone the key to your house, or you wouldn't just leave your door unlocked and open. Hey, everybody, come to my house. Any random strangers on the internet. No, you're not gonna do that. Just like you wouldn't tell people your password for your bank account. Don't do that. So all of these things are connected. You can think about like how you protect yourself in the physical world and then apply that to like the spiritual energetic world as well. With that being said, some things to avoid during this season and all year round, but especially right now because it is spooky season and the veil is thin. So sometimes people want to jump into the ocean of the spiritual world and just be like, hey, and they don't know what they're doing, and you just really need to protect yourself. Because it's spooky season, people want to like maybe do like spooky things that they wouldn't normally do, but we want to be responsible, okay? I highly do not recommend working with Ouija boards unless you really know what you're doing. But if you're like, I don't know, just stay away from it. Don't buy a Ouija board. Don't mess with a Ouija board. Don't make your own Ouija board. We did that in college one time. 10 out of 10. Do not recommend, because then we had serious... Anyway, we made a Ouija board in college. Don't recommend that, because then me and all my roommates had problems for 2 weeks after that. And then eventually I had to do like a rogue DIY exorcism. I was like my baby witch days in college. So I don't recommend it, because working with a Ouija board or trying to do any type of random seance when like you don't know, like you've never done this before, you don't know what you're doing, like Really don't just go from 0 to Ouija board, I'm gonna try to do a seance. Don't do that, because that's essentially like you are opening up your door in the middle of the night and being like, hey guys, strangers of the world, come on in. That's like the spiritual equivalent of messing with a Ouija board or trying to do some type of seance, trying to summon whatever to come into your space. That's just like opening up your door to your house and being like, hey strangers, anybody from the internet, come on in, here's my address. No, we're not doing that, okay? So stay away from that. You can like light a candle with an intention to bring in good vibes, connect with your highest and best spirit guides, your wise and well ancestors, and be imagining yourself in a white light of protection. Like, you could do something like that to start small if you want to just connect with, like, being specific about who are you trying to connect with. You're trying to connect with a loved one on the other side, trying to connect with your wise and well ancestors. But if you're starting from scratch, I would say the best thing you could do is just be grounded during this time. Connect with yourself and your own energy, and start to just imagine yourself with that white light of protection, and then tread slowly and carefully from there, okay? The spiritual world is part of our natural world. Supernatural things are natural, but they're like supernatural, okay? Just like the sharks and the whales in the ocean are part of our natural world, but it's a different world that's like coexisting on Earth with our world. There's different rules, you know, like we're human beings that live on Earth and we walk on land. That's what we breathe the air. But when you're swimming in the ocean or you go to the deepest depths of the ocean, like the rules are different. Like it's a different world entirely, and you need to respect that. You need to respect nature, you need to respect yourself, your energy, the spiritual world, and just approach everything with respect. The utmost respect, care, and caution, okay? For example, those millionaire, billionaire dudes who got in that not so great submarine and went way too deep into the ocean, and that tragically didn't end well for them. Yeah, that's one example of diving in deep into a world where you don't know what the rules are, you don't know what's out there, you don't know, like, you know, that's like, we don't want to do that. But don't be afraid. Just make sure that you are firmly grounded on Earth, on the land, okay? And that, you know, if you are gonna tread into the waves of the ocean, you're gonna be safe, you're gonna be protected, you're gonna be cautious about it, okay? Again, I keep using this like metaphor between like life on Earth, on the land, and the ocean, because that's like I feel like it's a good metaphor to explain this to people who maybe are new to this, because I got a lot of like new people in my space, and I just want to make sure everybody is protected, but also just be cautious, be respectful, be careful, but don't be afraid. Don't be like freaked out. So just like when I showed up to the crystal shop and I was like, yo, you guys, like weird stuff's happening, I'm freaked out. What if I get possessed by a demon? They're like, it's okay. You're not gonna get possessed by a demon, because that rarely happens. It does happen under certain weird ass circumstances, but you're gonna be okay. Like, just have that energy. The other thing I will say to avoid during this time is going to places that have really bad vibes. Going to places where you don't belong, where lots of terrible things have happened. When I was growing up in New Jersey as a little Italian American witch who was totally into all the ghosts and the spooky stuff and the haunted, I used to watch a lot of shows about like haunted places and like all of that stuff. I used to watch Crossing Over with John Edwards, which was like a psychic medium show. I'm not going to comment on whether or not he's, you know, real psychic medium or ethical or whatever. I'm just saying like that was in the zeitgeist of me growing up as a little Italian-American witch in New Jersey in the 90s. All of that was like on TV. It was very popular. So in New Jersey, there's an amazing zine magazine called Weird NJ. It's still out now, but it got started in the 90s or the early 2000s, around that time. And in Weird NJ, it's all about like weird places and stuff and like phenomenon, like haunted houses, haunted spaces, people who just have weird stuff, like weird sculptures in front of your yard, or the Jersey Devil is like our biggest cryptid. We have our own cryptid in New Jersey. It's the Jersey Devil. Like all of that weird stuff. Big emphasis on like weird places in New Jersey. And there's a lot of abandoned places in New Jersey, like abandoned insane asylums. Because back in the day, they used to have a lot of these like huge psychiatric hospitals where a lot of pain and death and like terrible things happen. Like people were not treated well in these places, and it was a lot of tragedy and trauma that happens, and it's a big space. Like, don't go to places like that, okay? Don't go to a place where weird shit has happened, bad things have happened to people. It's documented that, oh, people went to this place and then something really bad happened to them after. Don't do that, okay? Unless you're like a really experienced paranormal investigator and this is your realm, or you're an exorcist like Rachel Stavis and you know what you're getting yourself into. Don't go to crazy places like that during spooky season because, you know, you want to freak yourself out. Go to a little Fright Night, haunted house, corn maze instead. Don't go to crazy places where lots of death, pain, torture, trauma, bad vibes have happened, because that is like going and looking for the wrong kinds of energy. That's like jumping into the ocean while you're bleeding, or getting into a weird ass submarine and going too deep. It's dangerous. Don't do that. So that is what I would say to avoid. Don't try to summon any like demon, like don't try to summon any demons. Like, yeah, no, but really, don't try to summon any deities. Like, just start small. Don't try to do some crazy stuff that you don't know what you're actually bringing into your space. Don't do that, okay? Seriously. Don't try to mess with things that you don't know about. Just be careful. Like, really be careful at this time. If you work with fire or light any candles or anything for the rest of this spooky season as the veil is thin, just be very careful, be cautious. Fire is a very powerful element, but it can also be very destructive. So you want to approach that with care and respect and fire safety. What else? Just know that you're always protected. The light always drives out the darkness. These lower entities, even the most powerful ones, are nothing in comparison to the power of God, if you believe in God, angels, supreme high vibe beings, and your own highest vibration and energy. Just always know that you're protected. If you feel some weird vibes in your house, you feel like there's some spooky ghost energy in there that doesn't belong, tell it, fuck you, you don't belong here. Okay? Literally. Rachel Stavis talks about that in her book. Once during the pandemic, this was like about a month into the pandemic, I was living alone in Harlem in New York City in an apartment that was well over 100 years old. And this one like night it was like late at night, like 3 a.m, and I was like on my computer and I was doing something, and all of a sudden I felt like someone was behind me. Like, I literally felt like there was a real ass person just whoop from the floor and was standing behind me, and it freaked me out so bad, and I was just like, yo, you don't belong in here. I was just like, fuck you. I went and I got my holy water. That's another great tool that you can use for spiritual protection. Holy water, if you're into that, whether you're Catholic or not, doesn't really matter. You can just use the holy water. And I was just like, no, we're not doing this right now. Some other tools you can use to protect yourself spiritually right now is certain kinds of incense. You could just get the incense sticks. Like, that's a good, like, high vibe. There's some other things that are sacred to certain indigenous groups of people. You want to be respectful. Please don't use white sage, because that's sacred to indigenous people, and it's also now endangered because so many people are trying to buy it and use it, and it's really only meant for indigenous people, and it's a sacred practice for them. Don't use white sage. Don't buy white sage. If you already have white sage, Google what indigenous people recommend for you to do in that instance, but don't go buy white sage. That's not good. Unless you're indigenous and that's part of your practice. But yeah, frankincense incense, dragon's blood incense is always great. You can use other kinds of sage that are not like the white sage. Palo Santo is a beautiful, like, high vibe energy that you can use to burn and just have it around your space. You can also use bells, like the sound of bells. Again, if you're feeling spooked out or you just want to protect your energy, you can use like the sound of bells. And then you can also listen to certain solfeggio tones or binaural beats, and at certain frequencies on Spotify. So you can just Google, you can go on Spotify and be like protection, spiritual protection, solfeggio tones, and see what comes up, and then you can listen to that as well. Yeah, there's a lot of different like tools and practices around the world. But I would start with that. And if you feel spooked out in your house or something, you can also listen to music. Music shifts frequency very quickly, music and sound. So you could put on like your favorite song and be like, okay, we're like, we have a happy vibe now. You know what I mean? When I was growing up and I was like very young, 7 years old, 8 years old, my mom and I would watch these like spooky ghost hunting shows or shows about like haunted places, haunted hotels, like all of that. And then we would watch that like at night, and then we had this rule that if we watched something like spooky like that, we had to watch something happy afterwards before we went to bed, so that we didn't go to bed like spooked out and freaked out. So anyway, those are my spiritual protection tips for you. If you have any questions about spiritual protection, these are just a few of my like need to know, must know tips, but there's a lot of different additional practices out there. But these are like the core, important, foundational tips that I'm sharing with you to protect yourself spiritually, especially right now while the veil is thin between the earthly realm and the spiritual realm. But if you have any questions, you can comment. You can also DM me. And if you want to book a one-on-one session with me to ask me specific questions, we'll pull the tarot. If you want specific psychic reading with me or any intuitive coaching one-on-one with me, you can book that. And I would love to work with you. And thank you so much for everyone who joined live and who are watching the recording. And I will see you in the next one.